Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the MCSA's March webinar. We're so excited that you guys have joined us. I'm going to have our wonderful esteemed board member, Emma, introduce our guests for tonight.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. So tonight we have a lovely speaker. I won't spend too long introducing her. But tonight our speaker is Miss Daphna Rubin coming to us from the Colorado School of Public Health. And her niche is really storyteller meets public health. So she has a background in directing, but she has applied her skills and her master's in public health background to this amazing Tea on THC campaign, which we are about to hear about. So whenever you're ready, Daphna, without further ado, you can take it away.
Okay, let me set this up so that I can share my screen. Let's see, share. Here we go. Okay, can everybody see something that looks like a slideshow?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Now I'm trying to make it go. There we go. Okay. All right. So thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here speaking with you. And I'm going to speak to you about, as mentioned, the T on THC. Um, oops. Okay, so I work for the Colorado School. My name is Daphna Rubin, and I work for the Colorado School of Public Health. I work specifically for the Colorado Cannabis Education Research and Policy Project, and I'm on the education campaign. I also worked on the scientific review team for the same project, and I visit with them still frequently, and when possible, help out with review activities. I thought it might be helpful, so looking at some of your other guests, to describe maybe why I'm doing this, like why I'm here, why this is important to me. So, as a Coloradan, as you know, as you may know, we were the first in the nation to legalize a recreational cannabis market, so adult use cannabis. And with that, I felt that there comes along with that an obligation to also study it and research it and be on the pointy end of the spear for that part of it as well. So let's see here. So I'm going to be talking about the topics that I'm going to cover in this discussion are going to be the project overview and sort of the origin story, if you will. I am a storyteller. I can't help myself. So I thought that it would be good to describe sort of how we got here, lay of the land, what our landscape looks like here in Colorado, a review of the evidence, and also how that evidence then was evolved and developed into an education campaign, and then also about the T on THC specifically. So this is a view of our lovely building with a winter scene that I don't think we got this whole year on the Anschutz Medical Campus. And here we are. So, as you may know, Colorado was the first in the nation to legalize recreational cannabis in 2012. Our first dispensaries opened in 2014. Preceding that, in 2000, we had legalized medical marijuana. So, it's been around for a while in the state, in various states of regulation. So this is to give you an idea of what the market looked like when we first legalized it. So at the end of 2014, and these data come from the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division, the flower made up most of the market. It was about 62, 63%, followed by concentrates were at about 16%, edibles at about 13%, and then other products, which includes like pre-rolls and things like that. Um, Flash forward 10 years, and this is now what it looks like. Flowers at less than 50%, concentrates are at about 34%, edibles remained a little, almost the same, and same with other products. And then when we legalized our recreational market, there was a lot of evolution. There was in the products and the concentrations and sort of what you might see on the shelves of the dispensary. So these are some samples of some of the sort of newer products, the things that were higher concentration that evolved over this time and that you see more of now, and the concentration levels of these products also continued to rise during that period that I just described. So this gives you an idea of the distribution of potency across the various products. So for flour, and these data are from 2020, but for flour, the average potency is about 20% in our market. And for concentrates, average potency is about 72%. And this is obviously potency of THC in the cannabis product. So the rising levels of THC, the rising potency, captured attention both here in Colorado as well as nationally. There was and so these rising levels were elicited a lot of questions about do they matter? What is the impact to human health? What do we see happening in a landscape where the concentration of THC is increasing? Does it matter? Our state legislature started to ask the same question, Colorado General Assembly, and they turned to this, so they're wondering if there is an impact of concentration, THC concentration on human health, and if there's anything that, that we should consider in the regulatory landscape or even in, just to learn about the research, what's going on. So they turned to the Colorado School of Public Health. And they did pass legislation, HB 21-1317, that was in 2021. And then they turned to the Colorado School of Public Health and asked us to conduct the research to look into it. And then based on that research, what's the evidence, what do we know, and what can we learn from this? And then to educate the public was also part of the request from to the Colorado School of Public Health from the State Assembly. So our researchers, I think very experienced, esteemed colleagues at the Colorado School of Public Health, decided to conduct a scoping review. And a scoping review is secondary research, and it's a way to look sort of across the landscape of a topic, so to speak. It can be broad, and when it comes to cannabis and THC and potency, there is a lot out there on the topic. The question is what does that evidence look like? The other thing that you do with the scoping review is, identify gaps in the research. What are the researchers who are approaching this topic thinking about? What are they studying? What are they interested in? What questions are they asking? What methods might they be using? So you're sort of looking in what associations might they be making or not. And then the quality of that evidence, like what are how do are the studies good studies, methodologically rigorous? And then that information that you gather from a scoping review can become a basis for a systematic review. A systematic review is different because it asks a very specific question, and you're usually answering a specific question with a systematic review, whereas a scoping review, you're not necessarily. It's more of an across landscape. So the folks who are doing this were experts in this methodology, and for our purposes, they were trying to identify and describe studies that really explore the relationship of high potency products with all health outcomes. So it was looking at both harms and benefits, and efficacy, any risks, or so those were so we were looking at both sides of the possibilities for outcomes in a number of different realms, and all of that is described and part of the protocol. And then to produce an evidence map of what we found. And I'll show you a little bit of that too. So this is the Prisma that has resulted from a scoping review. And this is something that we update. So we did the first one. I worked on the scoping review both as a student when I was in my master's program and also as a professional. And the scoping, this is the most recent Prisma. So some things to note here, right at the top, you'll see, I don't know if you guys, it's very small, but it says 91,613 records. So basically, in conducting the search, and the search is conducted for the scoping review by an informational scientist, somebody who's doing a very advanced type of search. and they identify this. It's the same sort of search criteria, and they search these databases. The first search, the first scoping review we conducted a couple of years ago, we started from the beginning of time in these databases. So we literally were looking at they surfaced some studies that were literally like a sepia tone microfiche kind of scan that we were looking at, as opposed to what you might see today. And these shape and description, so to speak, of those studies was not what we used to see, what we're used to seeing when we look at studies today. So so to date, we have, or to September 24th, 2025, we have over 90,000 records have sort of surfaced. And of those, then we start a filtering process. So each study ultimately represents a data point as opposed to data collection representing the data points. So each study, we filter through them until we get down to the number at the bottom that you'll see 680 studies. So those are the studies that you see on the evidence map. And I'm going to show you a piece of that in a second. But if that link is, you can go to that link and that will take you to our evidence map, and you too can have a look through and a wander around the evidence map. It's all public and accessible. So those 680 studies, they're not quite represented here yet. That's coming up. I'm actually giving you a little preview. We will this evidence map is tied to the last search. And so you'll see the numbers will tick up. And that's going to happen probably in the next few months. So, but this is a little snapshot of something you could see. So you see here we have harm, safety, and efficacy. So, and all the different types of studies. And on the right-hand side, you see all the categories and outcomes and everything that we're looking for, all the cannabis products that might be named, and the exposures. And so the health outcomes that are one thing I want to draw your attention to is, as you'll see, the mental health category has actually quite a number of studies in it. So that tells us, this doesn't tell us an incredible amount of information, but it does tell us that that's something that researchers are really interested in and have been for quite some time, is sort of mental health harms and benefits related to cannabis, and what can we learn about that. So that's just a starting point, something you might want to take a look at. And so along the way, because we were learning things about how we study this, we were learning about the challenges related to studying these topics, and we were, we learned. So along the way, we were publishing, and so these are some of our publications. We have another couple in the pipeline. We were invited to contribute a review, actually, to the annual review of public health, and that'll be coming out in June, and that'll be mostly focused on policy. And then we have here the one that I really want to take a little slightly closer look at is this one. I mentioned that mental health, the number of studies that are in that mental health bucket. So we did a mental health systematic review right up here at the top. This Annals of Internal Medicine came out last fall. So in this Annals of Internal Medicine systematic review, we looked at, the team that worked on this. These were my colleagues, worked on this and produced this study, and you can go and read the whole thing. But the headlines, kind of the conclusion thing to understand from this. Sorry, I am moving the little things around the screen here. So the thing to understand about this is that it did show high concentration THC products, showed consistent unfavorable associations with psychosis or schizophrenia and cannabis use disorder. And then I can show you the conclusions here. And then there was some low quality evidence that was relatively inconsistent by population for therapeutic benefits for anxiety and depression. And so inconsistent by population, that means that some of the studies categorized the cohort, the sample, as they were individuals. Participants that were included were individuals who may have had a diagnosis of some sort, not necessarily for anxiety and depression. It might have been anxiety and depression related to some other health condition, and then people who did not necessarily, they were otherwise healthy populations. So that's what that means. Okay, so now, so you saw that big tableau, that dashboard of all of that, the studies and information, and it's a pretty big, broad thing. How do we get that to educating the public? What are we saying? What are we doing? So we had to figure out the next part, and so first and foremost is what are the goals of educating the public? So literally to inform the public, to educate them about what these products are, what they look like, literally what the marketplace looks like, what concentration means in cannabis products, of THC and of CBD, and some of the other chemicals that are in the plant, and then also to decrease usage and delay onset amongst our priority populations. So when we talk about priority populations, in terms of this project, we're talking about at the moment, and we're talking about young people whose brains are still under development. We know that the brain continues developing into the mid 20s. And then we're also talking about, and so that does include also folks who are over the age of 21. And then we're also talking about the pregnant and breastfeeding population. And we're also talking about all the parents, mentors, teachers, loved ones, peers of those people. So it's important to that when we're educating people, we're not just that you're speaking to the person who is is a priority, as well as other people in their environment who might be able to be supportive or helpful to them, who may also share the information. So this next step that to get to where we could take all that scientific data and have it make sense for the general public, it's a process of translation. It is a little bit, can sometimes feel like a foreign language. And so so this process of translating the science into something that the public can understand and appreciate is a pretty in-depth process. It's pretty robust. So first we looked at the at articles that were appropriate to summarize from our scoping review that made sense for what we were doing. And then we also looked at additional relevant research that came from expert organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American Psychiatric Association, like other organizations that SAMHSA that have also been thinking about these topics and writing about them and researching them, and then also some clinical recommendations. The materials were then compiled into these sort of kind of heavy documents, so to speak. They were kind of foundational guiding documents, and those materials were then reviewed, modified, and revised, and there was a process involved with our Scientific Review Council. So overseeing this entire project, the Colorado Cannabis Education Research and Policy Project, is a Scientific Review Council. It's a multidisciplinary board, if you will, of experts, and everything from epidemiologists and addiction scientists and pediatrician and an emergency toxicologist and people who have experience with the topic, and also a hospitalist and internist who makes recommendation to use cannabis-based medicine, that sort of thing. So this is a pretty broad range of folks looked over these materials. And then once those toolkits were approved, we then provided them to our fantastic creative partner, whose work you may have already seen and you will see more of in a moment. And they really helped push this to the next step of getting it out to the public. Another really important part of this process is community stakeholders and meeting with the community. And so we did that along the way. And these are some things that we learned from them, but I would also say that these are also things that are just good practice when it comes to communicating good public health communication. So first is to lead with empathy and curiosity. So learning from also campaigns of the past. as we have here. And this is an actual post as part of the campaign that we have out there on social media right now. It's a shame that shaming doesn't work. Fortunately, most parents have a sense of humor about parenting, or we hope they do. So it's a shame that shaming doesn't work, is really a nod to the fact that a campaign that shames, or when you're trying to shame people and make judgments about what their choices they're making, you're probably not going to get very far in having them hear anything else you have to say. So we really take that to heart and really think about that when we're communicating. Just the facts, please. So there's a lot of information out there, and people don't have time. And so this is really, young people really just want the facts with as little like framing or bias. And so I would say that, you know, some of our communication borders on wonky, because we're trying to, again, just be very straightforward and just the facts. Plain language, get away from the jargon. You know, we don't talk exposures and outcomes, generally speaking. I'm sure there's maybe some in there, but we try and stay away from things that sound too researchy or academic or that sort of kind of thing. Messenger matters. So this is really interesting, is that, you know, credible messengers are really important. But also it's okay if this information is coming from a lot of different places. In other words, that kind of building out that echo chamber and other people to carry forward a message is actually is a good thing, is a desirable goal. And so in terms of messenger matters, like having, you know, providers who have trusted relationships with patients deliver information is really important. So it's important for us as public health professionals to empower those providers, and then parents, even when, you know, then we have this in another post, it says if their eyes are rolling but their ears are listening, even when their eyes are rolling, it's important. Right? Parents are still a pretty big influence on a young person's life. And so, you know, arming parents and, you know, providing that information to them. So messenger matters. Once we've shared the facts, this is the other thing that community really came back to us with is, okay, so now you've told us all this stuff about, you know, like I just shared with you the information about psychosis and schizophrenia spectrum disorders and, you know, cannabis use disorder. Now what? Now what are we supposed to do with this? How are we prepared to move forward with that? So, this information at the top, and I also took to heart, Casey, you had asked me to think about teens and to talk about how we are talking to teens about this topic. So I took that to heart and what we're going to talk about next here, because we talk to more than just teens, but teens use, so this is from the Monitoring the Future Survey 2024. This is kind of like a summary that they publish. I highly encourage you to go check out those data if you are not familiar with it. Monitoring the Future is an amazing resource. Teens use marijuana to relieve stress, relax, and have fun. So we really focused on the first things, like the relieve stress and relax. So if you dig deeper into that, yes, there's plenty data that actually talks about stress and anxiety and how cannabis might be used as a coping mechanism, especially THC products may be used as a coping mechanism to relieve those experiences, which are normal life experiences that we all have. And so we had also have incorporated into the campaign other coping skills. How else can we cope? Let's talk about what that stress and anxiety, what's underlying it, what you're experiencing, and then let's think about some other methods, some other tools that we might use. And so I am going to do the thing that never works, but maybe it will. I actually have, this is a 15-second video on TikTok. We have our material on TikTok. And this young person is a student at 5280 School, which is a sober school for young people who have struggled with substance use disorders and cannabis use disorder in this case, and they're overcoming it. And so she talks a little bit about her experience. So, and these are some other skills that I'm sure may not be surprising, but it's more than just that, you know, if you do this, you'll feel better. It's literally a process of rewiring that teenage brain and the sort of the and really hardwiring a sort of new pathway in the active regions in the developing teenage brain. And so the teenage brain is different from like the 40-year-old brain or the 60-year-old brain, and in that they're still forming those pathways and they're going through like a pruning process. And so you can rewire those and strengthen them through some of these alternative coping skills. Connection with the outdoors is also a really big one that we promote because we live here in Colorado and it's a great place to be outdoors. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to play the video. Bear with me. It is possible that you won't be able to hear it, and then we'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, where are we here? Can everybody hear it?
I cannot hear it.
Yeah, I can't hear it also.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that did
Uh,
not work. My apologies. Maybe after I'm done with the presentation, I can figure out how to play it for you. But anyway,
Yeah, we could also watch it with there's captions on it, so we could watch it with the captions as well.
do you want me to do that? You want me to give that a shot?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Okay. She's really lovely and sweet. You can find her on TikTok, but it'll probably like take a hot minute to go find her. So so that's so those are the kinds of things that we put out there for young people to think about alternative coping skills. And I I personally have found that we have a little film actually about students from the 5280 school, and it's kind of awesome. So I just highly encourage you, if you have a chance to go look at the whole film, you can really hear them talk about, and it's just the courage that it takes for them to really talk about their journeys is really laudable. So this is sort of just to give you some idea of where, so now the question is now that if you have the content, where are you putting it? Like, so if you're going to engage with teens in a sort of mass communication way. And so the idea is like to give them some idea of some ideas that they can then go research more thoroughly. So hopefully they're coming to our website, and we do see that they're doing that. They're coming to the website or they're going somewhere else for more information, for more in-depth information. But the idea is to just seed the idea that if you're struggling, if there's something going on, there are resources. And so this is to let folks know that this is why we're using social media. This is why that's where we show up, is because this is also where young people are more likely to see promotional material about products that maybe they're not old enough and should not be using. Okay. So the other population that we interface with and that we speak with and that we're serving are parents, right? So that they're incredibly important. We talked about credible messengers. Parents, even when your teenagers think you're the dumbest person on earth, are actually really important messengers. So this is something that, approximates something we've heard before. I think my teenager is smoking weed, but I don't know where to begin. So they're often caught off. Oftentimes it's because they're caught off guard because the products don't look anything like what they may have known when they were teenagers, and so it's a much different environment. The kid might actually, if the young person is smoking, then maybe they're smelling it because it still smells the same. Anyway, so they sort of have some evidence, but they're really not sure if what they should be saying. And so we encourage parents to really what we're doing is we're giving parents information. We're also giving them sort of tools and tactics about how to go about these conversations, right? So it's not you're going to say the wrong thing, and sometimes it's not going to come out right, but you should keep trying, and that you should start with those open-ended, non-judgmental questions, which is it can be hard to do, especially if you're very concerned. But so it's starting with open-ended, non-judgmental questions, and this is the beginning of a whole curriculum, of a whole process. And I won't go through the whole thing here, but called motivational interviewing. So the director of the campaign is actually has a background in clinical psychology. And so this is a motivational interviewing is something that's used with people who are recovering or have substance use disorders. And so we've adapted it specifically for cannabis and also for parents and loved ones and people who aren't trained therapists or people who aren't trained therapists to use. So an example of an open-ended question may be, either, I found this. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Can you tell me what your experience was while you were, when you were using it? It's that kind of thing as the starting point of a conversation. And then where that conversation goes all depends on, what the answers are. And we have a whole curriculum about this that it's coming soon. It will be published soon. In the meantime, there's sort of a shortened version of it on our website in one of our curricula. It's self-guided. And so the other population, as I mentioned, sort of these important messengers are providers. And so we get the question a lot from providers is they're not sure the landscape has changed a lot. They're not sure what they should be saying and how to approach it. So this is something that summarizes a concern from a provider for perinatal provider. My patient is using cannabis in nursing. Should I recommend formula instead of breast milk that might be tainted with cannabis? And what do I say? Like, where do I even begin the conversation? And so, similar to the parenting conversation, we also have a whole series of continuing education for providers. And Emma came for the first one of that series, which was delightful. And so this is also a curriculum that's going to be provided through our website. But just to sort of call your attention again, one of the underlying features to this is how we're talking about it. Like, how are we at beginning the conversation and assessing how far down the road we need to go, and then what recommendations you need to make based on that trusted relationship in the back and forth. While there is our expert organizations and research tells us there is no known safe dose, that's true. There's also, you're talking to people who may be consumers when they're not pregnant, so the conversation may look different than it will with someone who's younger, and so the provider really has to really have that good conversation so that they can figure out what the right balance is, what that patient needs to understand and what the right balance is. And sometimes that might mean, and this is one circumstance where the better path, and this is going to be up to the provider and the patient to discuss this, the better path may be harm reduction in that particular scenario. But all of that, sort of the particulars of how you have that conversation, is the important thing that we're trying to communicate through the campaign. We also do research. You had asked about research that we do, and we do program evaluation all across the way. We have some publications coming out. I'm not going to tip my hand about those just yet, but we are constantly collecting data to learn if there's any change in knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors as we have put this campaign out there. And so all of that evaluation, some of it is going into publications. And so this brings me to the T on THC. I should also say that the education campaign assets, those things that I was just describing in the curricula and all that, there are a number of other things. I was trying to tailor it to the topics that you all were interested in. There are a number of other things that we're also doing in the campaign to disseminate information. One of them is like a science-informed art exhibition. So we trained artists on cannabis and the risks associated, and some things that we know about benefits, and then they produced art. And so there's these art exhibitions, and there are a number of other ways that we communicate this information to the public, and we're trying to do that in a diverse way to really reach people in all of the ways that may resonate with them. So the THC campaign. So these are some of them. I'm going to go through a couple of slides here that show you some of what you see here in Colorado, billboards and so forth. This question here, is marijuana becoming your best friend, is actually something that came from community. This was a man, I believe, who was in a focus group, and it was a question that he would ask himself because he's, I think, struggling with use. And so this is something that parents are unaware of, what dabbing is. And this young person is a student also at the 5280 Sober School, and is also a member of the LGBTQ community. And so the other thing we're doing the whole time that we're doing this work is collecting metrics. I'm not sure if this is an area of interest for you all, but I can share with you some of our campaign metrics to just show you sort of what kind of reach we're having. So our campaign has reached 56 million impressions, and the campaign is about 15 months old. So the 56 million impressions means that's not that's like if you're passing by a bus, then that counts as an impression. So it's there are less than 6 million people in the state of Colorado. So it's not that many, that 56 million people, meaning all over the place. It's just it's like every time you pass by something that has THC on it, that's what 56 million impressions means. 844,000 are engaging with our content. And you can see the various metrics for the different platforms where our material appears. This green, this content that has the green color on it is our is geared toward our perinatal population, and it's intentionally that color because that's a soothing color, and when we tested it, it was the one that actually resonated with that population. Also, the parenting population is really interested in knowing risks, which, as someone who has had 2 children and been pregnant, you're constantly calibrating risk. So that is not an uncommon thing. It's not unusual. I think resonates with people who are pregnant because it's a typical part of being pregnant. So let's see here. And then this is for our website. This is sort of traffic to our website. We're over 40,000 visitors a month. And all of these metrics, I meant to include the slide that compares it to other campaigns. These are all higher than other campaigns of also about drug use or other prevention campaigns. So this tells you where people are coming from when they're visiting our website. We're a Colorado-based campaign, and we're serving the people of Colorado. We also have visitors from other places in the country because, as you all probably are very well aware, the chaotic regulatory landscape means that there's lots of change and flux in this environment. And so I think people come visiting because they're maybe looking for materials that are either not yet available in their state or maybe coming soon to their state. And these are just a sample of some of our latest. We went a little cheeky with our with our parenting population, and so far it seems to be doing pretty well. And these are young adults, so these are folks who are probably high school age, and it's really helping. Young people are concerned about their future. It matters to them. It's something that they think about. And so these really prioritize and elevate that thinking about your future. And as you hopefully notice, we don't do a lot of don'ts or no's or nots. We don't do a lot of finger wagging, as campaigns of old may have done. And this is also, we've updated to show other parts of Colorado. And so these are more rural areas of Colorado. And so those are new ads that will be coming online. And then this is a dizzying array of some of our social media and our influencers. We have we have a collection of Latina mother influencers who are just these lovely, lovely people. Although you can't see her face anyway, she's down here. But there, you can see them on our website actually. And we have a mother, a Black mother from Denver, and she's nursing. It's just she's got little kids and she's nursing and she's on the playground, and I'm like, hats off to you. And she's telling us about cannabis and use during pregnancy, and the do's and don'ts. Mostly the don'ts, because it's not safe to use during pregnancy. So the and then yeah, so those are, and this woman up here is actually an OBGYN. So yeah, so those are, I think that's pretty much it. That's all I got. I'm going to stop sharing. And if y'all have any questions, there we go.
Wonderful. Daphna, thank you so much. That was a great
Oh, you're so
presentation.
welcome. You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, so we have time for a Q&A. Um, if anybody has any questions, feel free to go ahead and either drop them in the chat or go ahead and unmute. We do have some questions in case nobody has any, but I'll open the floor up to anybody who has questions.
I see that there are lots of links in here, so I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, I was sharing just a little bit of
Okay.
information while you were talking. One link was
Okay.
your paper, and then the other link was a book you probably already know about called 10 to 25 that I wanted to share with some people.
Sure.
So,
Okay. Okay. Oh, you've seen these? Where have you seen the ads? You've seen these ads?
yeah, I've
Have you
seen
seen our
them.
ads?
Yeah, I've seen them online mostly, but
Oh, okay.
also when we were in Colorado, I saw one.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So,
All right. Yeah.
uh,
Awesome.
yeah. Any
Okay.
questions from anybody?
So, how soon do you think it would be before other states started sort of pushing for campaigns like this? Because it seems like Colorado seems like this is obviously, like you explained, the connection, like it's state sponsored. So, like, do you see that happening elsewhere anytime soon? Because even when you showed the map, there were a lot of spots, like people looking at the websites in other places. So you've reached them, but when will they maybe have their own version? Or do you think it will be possible?
So, other states do. So, usually, when with substances, it's not unusual for public health departments or states to undertake some sort of prevention education campaign. That's pretty typical. The they it how much money and what goes into it, and what resources they apply to it, that's highly variable. So there's usually going to be something in the landscape, but how obvious it is and whether people actually can see it, and whether they approach it the way that Colorado has and the way that we have using Colorado resources, is that's highly variable. We actually have been invited to kind of consult with other states on our material, sort of basically like, can we get your materials sort of question. Um, and so, yes, we talk about that. We've actually engaged those conversations. We're not at a place yet where we can just say, yeah, sure, use our materials and just, slap whatever you want on them. Because sometimes some of the information will apply, but some of it might not, because as you all know who have been to Colorado, our marketplace is somewhat unusual. Or perhaps, we're not necessarily the same as like what's going on in Georgia or what's going on in Hawaii, or what's going on in New Jersey. Like it's our marketplace looks a little bit different. So also, you'd really want, like I would really want, if people were using these materials or using this as an example, I would really want them to make sure that they're representing their own population. Like, you want to see those places that you know and love, right? That you're like, oh, I've been there, that kind of thing. But yes, there is interest and people are talking about it, and we do get approached by it. And I think this is going to be we're going to see more of this as our regulatory landscape is evolving.
I also got a question.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on educating like young adults on the endocannabinoid system in general?
That's a great question. So I was just reading before I jumped on this call, our amazing team who works on the perinatal curriculum and the, sort of communicating with perinatal populations, developed a curriculum where it really got in depth about the endocannabinoid system's function during pregnancy and perinatal period. And I have to say, I was like, oh my God. Don't really. It
Mm.
was gripping. I had no idea. So I think that I am not the person poised to be doing that, but I'm sure somewhere, I am sure that we could touch on that topic. I would say that we're public health focused, and it would definitely be an add-on. Like we would probably want to meet with some of our medical school colleagues or
Mm.
somebody from our SRC, a lot of those folks are MDs, to really help us understand that and figure out how to communicate about it. But
Mm,
we do talk a little bit, like we touch on it in our curricula that are on our website. We actually
mm,
do mention, like, in broad strokes, everybody has an endocannabinoid system that's in the brain and there are
mm,
receptors. And, so we sort of do the basic level
mm.
of frame, stage setting.
I see. Yeah, because my thoughts are like, young adults are curious by nature, right? You can't really
Of
stop them from
course.
trying these stuff. So I feel like, they're curious about, hey, why does this work for me? Why does this make me happy and stuff? Then
Yeah.
when we like explain meditation and then they find out,
Yeah.
oh, it's the same receptors that meditation is triggering, the same as cannabis. I feel like they can find
Yeah.
that connection, be like, hey, I'm gonna go meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our materials, like when we put forth coping skills, they were evidence-based coping skills. It
Mm,
wasn't just like, oh, this sounds nice.
mhm.
It's literally because of that exact thing you're
Yes.
describing.
That's how I started also smoke. Then I found out, oh, meditation, it helps. So,
I was gonna
It's
say
traveling the same
it's kind
pathway.
of ironic how, them stumbling into cannabis is leading them to some of these
yeah.
resources on better coping and things that
Yeah.
they might have
Mhm.
needed anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Thank
Of course. Um, I was going to respond to, there's a
Yep.
question here from Sangeeta. Would you be open to presenting in college student-led organizations? Yes, yes. Um, as you can see, I like talking to people. So this is probably something borrowed from my first, my original pathway, making long-form documentaries. So we definitely would value an opportunity to speak to college and student-led organizations. It's really, yes, would be the answer. So anything else I can
I
help
have
you
a
with?
question. I'm wondering, have you
Yes.
guys considered utilizing game-based learning for this for teens?
Um, we have not. I know there was another campaign that I researched when I was sort of researching other campaigns and just, efficacy and did they actually show benefits and that sort of thing. There was a campaign that was actually game based. It was very, very, I would say, targeted and was game based. And I don't remember the what the efficacy was reported about that. Um, but that's interesting. It's an interesting idea. We haven't considered it. We feel like we have a we have a lot of initiatives, or a lot of um, work streams, sort of in development. That's not one of them, but interesting. And definitely an interesting idea. There is some of that out there.
Yeah, I
And
was
we
just
do incorporate,
curious.
I should say for the school-based, we have that science-informed art that I mentioned before. There is a curriculum developed as well for middle and high school students, and there are games incorporated into that curriculum for those
Awesome.
students. Yeah, so
That's
there's a little bit of
awesome.
that. Yeah.
I was just wondering what you guys thought of that, if you'd looked into that. Um,
Yeah.
let's see. Any final questions? I could come up with one or two more because I definitely have a lot of them. All right. So I'm wondering, in your view, Daphna, uh, maybe in terms of healthcare providers, in terms of parents and reaching parents and stigma, what more do you feel needs to be done at this point, at least in Colorado, that you feel you guys are still considering or
So I think what is really exciting to me about this topic is that it's evolving, right? Like we are, as I mentioned before, our regulatory landscape is changing, and so to me, it's really important to kind of to I am enjoying kind of being in this more or less front row seat, and I think there's value in the sort of it, keeping that research going, maintaining that the scoping review because the way people are studying this and the products that are becoming more available in other places is evolving. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to continue that research. I mean, um, Emma was there for Dr. Hurd's presentation. Dr. Yasmin Hurd, she's the director of addiction sciences at the ICANN School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And so she has a lab, a neuroscience lab where she studies substances and cannabis. And that was her call to action was like there was, if you went around the room of posters, there was all kinds of things that people were presenting on. And she was like, we need all of this to keep going. I mean, that's what we kind of, so I think on the education side, I would say that good education, good prevention education is sustained, right? Because you're hopefully educating young people who are then going to grow up and have their own children who are going to be in the same environment, right? And so there's a need to kind of sustain and continue that education. So the sustainability that's one thing when I was studying the efficacy of campaigns like this, of prevention education campaigns, sustainability is a key feature.
that makes perfect sense. It's easy to for teens to lose interest. Pregnant women are not pregnant forever,
Yeah,
obviously. So, there's all these different things kind of get in the way and uh, can make that
yeah,
tricky. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, any final thoughts from anybody? Any final
Um,
questions?
yes, actually, on the topic of coping strategies, like alternative coping strategies, which one do you feel like resonated the most with the young people? Like,
So what we saw at the 5280 school, and again, if you go, you can see the film online about it.
mhm,
But we did see there was art. Being creative was
mm,
really a key was a really great coping mechanism for some journaling in some form or fashion. But there was one young man. Who was in music, really got into music and sort of doing something really creative, really ignites those pathways. One thing that we don't talk about this as much in detail um, in the campaign, but the project director, is a clinical psychologist, and she talks about. Oh, thank you. Thanks for putting it out there. She talks about that with young people, particularly, hyper arousal like so is it can be a coping skill. And so for example, it's like listening to loud music and doing something that really like almost takes over your brain. Like, the thing that you lose track of time while you're doing it, like things that are really hyper arousal, that actually is for teens can sometimes be a better coping mechanism. Like not just going for a walk in the woods or journaling, but running up the mountain, it's that kind of,
heavy
really
metal
activate.
music.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
Yeah,
mean, there's some science
yeah.
behind
I mean,
why
that's why I go to raves as well. So,
yeah, there you go. So there's something to that.
yeah,
Also connection. We all
yeah,
probably know that, connection is the opposite of addiction, kind of
yeah.
that cycle.
Thank you.
Sure. So can I just ask, what are you all in different areas of study in the program, or are you all getting the same like concentration? Like
It's
what's
all
the,
MS. So, but we can all
okay,
pick different electives and classes, although there are some core classes that we all have to take.
okay,
I don't know, what percent would you guys say?
I think it's like,
Half, 50%?
yeah,
No.
maybe around 50-50 or 60-40. But all the classes are about cannabis.
Mhm.
So they're just
okay. But
so
is
My
for
with an eye to developing cannabis, like medical cannabis, medicine-based cannabis, or like the science side of it, or
So there's also
congratulations,
like
person.
policy and the social equity aspect of it. So
yeah.
Okay.
for me specifically, I took some regulatory classes because I'm into community development. And
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so like
Cool.
how Casey said, like we pick our own electives. So some people go on more of like a science route, some people go on more of a clinician route, and then some people go on more of like a regulatory and policy route. So it's really an awesome program. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different classes to take.
Cool. Cool. All right. Okay. Well, it was a pleasure.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
no,
That was helpful.
absolutely. 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 And feel free to reach out. It was lovely speaking to all of you. And yeah, have a great evening.
Thanks so much,
Have
Have a
a
guys.
good
good
All
one.
night.
right. Thank you.